Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Jordan with the PictureMonk Podcast, and this is episode 13. And this one is going to kind of be a little bit different than the other ones. It's going to be more like last week's podcast where I talked about one topic just for the whole podcast. And this one is basically going to be all about editing, minus one news article that I found that technically is not a news article. It's just kind of a blog post that some guy wrote about photography and what's going to happen in many years when nobody knows where any of the photos are. So let's go ahead and get into that news article real quick. It was written by a guy named Mike Yost, who owns Mike Yost Photography. It looks like he is out of Florida. And I was actually just looking around on Facebook, and I saw that he posted a post on another friend's Facebook account. And so I clicked on it because the headline really kind of got me. The headline was, "The most photographed generation will have no photos in 10 years." So that does really kind of spark something when you kind of read that. And what he basically talks about, which I will link the article URL to in the blog post for today. That'll be at picturemonk.com/PMP013. And you can basically read it, but what he's saying is that there's cameras everywhere. You know, there's security cameras everywhere. There's regular people taking cameras with their pictures with their phones, and regular photographers taking pictures, but nobody does anything with them. And this is kind of my stance on some photography is that you really need to print your photos. Even if it's going to the Walgreens and getting a couple 4x6s or 5x7s or something like that, you really need to print your photos, because what he was saying was he found a DVD in like a desk drawer somewhere that had a whole bunch of photos on it, and those can get lost extremely easy. Yeah, sure, 4x6s and stuff can get lost and damaged, but it's good to have both of those together. So kind of think about it. If you came across a box full of 4x6s, old family stuff, would you look at those right away or just put them aside and be like, I'll check them out later? No, probably you'll go in there and start digging through and look at a whole bunch of old family photos. And if you found a DVD that was labeled photos, you might just set it to the side and say, I'll check it later, and that sort of thing. So he really makes a good point, and it kind of makes me want to start printing, even if it's just cheap little 4x6s, like I was saying. It kind of makes me want to start printing some of my photos of family and stuff. So I might look into doing that, and I'm actually going to have, if you don't know, if you haven't followed me for that long, usually every Friday I put out what's called a Friday Freebie, and it just kind of lists a photography related something that is free for anybody to use. And I found a service. There's probably a couple out there that do this, but it's a service where you can take photos from your phone and send them in directly from your phone, and they'll send them to you for free. You just got to pay shipping and handling, and you're going to get, I think it's up to $1,000 a year or something like that. And you just got to pay shipping and handling. So I might test that out with a couple of photos that I have on my phone just to see how it works. But yeah, just read the article if you're interested in it. Like I said, I'll link to it in the show notes for this episode of the podcast. But let's go ahead and get into the main topic. And I think I'm going to call this podcast "It's All About the Editing, Baby." But it's like, it's all about the editing, baby, that kind of thing. I don't know. I'm stupid. But it's all about editing, and I kind of wanted to go through about 5 different topics per editing suite that's usually used by a lot of photographers out there, Photoshop and Lightroom. And it's just small little simple things that you can do to kind of improve your workflow or improve the way you're doing certain things. So let's go ahead and talk about that. So I'm just going to start running through about 5 things in Photoshop that really help me out when I'm editing stuff. And number one is to if you're going to do some advanced editing, it kind of goes along with make sure you save your stuff quick. Save your stuff often, which I do. But it's duplicate your background layer in when you're editing in Photoshop. You really want to do this, even if you going to do something quick, maybe. duplicate your background layer, and basically what I'm saying is take your lock to layer that you usually, like if you drag a photo into Photoshop or you drag it into Camera Raw and then it puts it in Photoshop for you, duplicate that layer and make those edits to that layer. That will really help out because you will always have a fallback of editing, that layer. You say you mess it up really bad. There's no amount of, Command Z that'll take all the edits back that you did wrong. And you can always just delete everything, start from scratch to that new file, and you'll be good to go. So I always try to duplicate my background layer just to make sure I have a fallback. And it's basically called non-destructive editing. That's what that term really means. So that's a good thing to pay attention to when you're doing some editing in Photoshop. The next thing is to not forget about the new filter that is actually in Photoshop, and that's the Camera Raw filter. So if you have a CR2 file from like Canon, I don't remember what Nikon uses, but you have a RAW file and you drag it into Photoshop, it's automatically going to open up Camera Raw, and you really want to get in there and edit that way. But let's say you make all your edits in Camera Raw, and then you are done. You tell it to open in Photoshop, and it opens everything in Photoshop. But you kind of maybe want to play around with it more in Camera Raw because you may be more familiar with that. Open it back up in the Camera Raw filter, and it'll look exactly like Camera Raw does. So I really use that feature a lot. It's also helpful if you want to edit video in Photoshop. So make sure you play around with that. Make sure you remember that it's up there, and pay attention to all the cool edits that you can do in Camera Raw, even if you've already gone out of Camera Raw. The next one is really helpful if you're going to do some removal of stuff from your photo. So like everybody always knows the clone stamp tool in Photoshop, or the spot healing brush in Photoshop. Those are like the main ones that usually everybody uses. But the other one that is really helpful that I haven't seen a lot of people actually talk about is the patch tool. And the patch tool is basically just like you basically draw over what you don't want to be in the photo. So one example would be, let's say you took a picture of a sign or something and there was a nail sticking out of the board and you just want it to be a clean board. It's a weird example, I know, I just thought about that, but you want to take the nail out. You could obviously do the spot healing brush on that. It might work a little bit, it might not, but most people would go right for the clone stamp tool. But you can easily remove that in one fell swoop with the patch tool. So you basically just draw over that nail, and then you slide up or slide over or wherever you want to sample that new space from, and it automatically fills it in there using content aware fill. So that's really helpful. I've been using that a lot more often than I would use the clone stamp tool, and it's a lot quicker too. So play around with that, make sure you remember that that's there, and because it's in one of those sub menus in Photoshop, so it's not the one that's always on top. But just make sure you play around with that and check that out. All right, the next one is the adaptive wide angle filter. That's another one that is somewhat overlooked just because it's a fairly new filter, and it's basically used for removing distortion from your photos. You really get a lot of distortion. Number one, if you're using a wide angle lens, and number two, if you're shooting something that has a lot of vertical lines and horizontal lines, converging lines, basically, you're going to get a lot of distortion. Even if you put in your camera calibration, if you tell it to do lens correction, you're still probably gonna have a lot of distortion. So the adaptive wide angle filter, basically you draw where you want the straight lines to be, and then that kind of auto corrects it. And I actually did a video on this a long time ago, showing you an example of when I shot a business center in a apartment complex, and I go through the whole part of drawing the straight lines, and you can see how it affects it. And then there are spots on the edges of the photo where basically took away information, so there was nothing there, and I'll show you how to add that back. So go ahead and check that out. You can actually find that at picturemonk.com/remove distortion, or you can just check the show notes, and I'll have the video there as well. And the final Photoshop tip that is kind of quick and easy, down and dirty, that you can use is, let's say you're taking a photo and you want to make it black and white. Usually when you make it black and white in Camera Raw or in Photoshop, it gives you the color sliders along with that, so you can independently change the blues in the photo, and that'll either lighten or darken the image to more of a white or a black or kind of a gray in between. That's a normal feature. But don't forget about the white balance as well. If you're making a photo black and white balance still affects that photo. So what I would recommend is, especially in Camera Raw, go ahead and convert it to grayscale. If you're going to do this, if you're going to make a black and white photo, go ahead and convert it to grayscale. And before playing with the grayscale sliders and changing it that way, play with the white balance and see what kind of effect that gives you, because depending on what you shoot, you might go towards the warmer side and it might brighten it up a little bit. You might go to the cooler side, that might brighten it up a little bit. It might change some of the highlights and the shadows, and you can see how white balance affects that. So don't forget that too. Even if you play with the color sliders and you still don't kind of like the effect that it gives you, go ahead and play with the white balance again after that and see how that works for you. You might like to change. I often do when I'm playing with black and white photos. All right, so let's go ahead and start talking about Lightroom, because that's the one I'm kind of getting into more. I know a lot about Lightroom, but I never really got into it and played around with like the organizational factor and that sort of thing. So the first thing I would do is use your snapshots. I use my snapshots a lot in Lightroom, and what snapshots are basically, you might make a edit to a photo and you're like, oh, that looks kind of cool. Let me still play around with it, but I like the way that looks and I want to keep it that way. You used to have to duplicate that photo and then remove your edits and then start making new edits to it. Now you can take a snapshot of the photo. So let's say you make an edit. Let's say you do a black and white edit to a photo, and you want to keep that black and white. In the left side of the Develop module in Lightroom, you're right under the Presets section. You're going to see a snapshot column or a row or something. And when you click the plus button next to it, you're going to be able to label that snapshot. And I usually just label it like black and white 1 or color 1 or something like that, depending on what it is. So what that does is it saves those settings. So now you can just reset that image completely and start making more edits to it. So when you go back to that edited photo in the future, you'll still see all these snapshots. So then you can go back to the black and white one that you originally had. That kind of thing. I use those a lot. So if you were to look through my Lightroom catalog, you would see all these photos, but in that, like, let's say I have a catalog of 10 photos, there's probably going to be 20 to 30 photos actually in there if you count all the snapshots, just of different edits that I like to do. So that's a really cool feature, and I use that a lot. All right, the next one is more of a organizational thing. It's try to not have too many photos in your libraries in Lightroom. I made this mistake. I actually imported. I guess you would call me a raw hoarder. So what I would do is I take my raw files and I usually save them on a folder called raw on my computer. So I always have all these old raw files that I can go back to and play with. If they're really old and I know I'm never going to touch them, then I'll go ahead and delete them. But so I was like, well, why don't I just put all these into Lightroom? And so I drug all these photos, these raw files, into Lightroom. And right when I did that, my computer was just dying. It felt like it was on its last leg, and it's because I put them all into one folder in my Lightroom library. So what I had to do is I had to remove all of those and then make certain folders for each topic. So I had one where we went to a festival, and I have all those raw files, so I have those labeled festival, 2014 or 2013, whatever it was. And then I have like another one called biker photos, and those are in there that way. So that way when I pull up all those and I want to edit them, it's not trying to pull up hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of raw files. So I try to keep them all separate. if I can, and then also go through them and delete the ones I know for sure. You know, I even had one. I'd probably had like 10 or so that were test shots, and they were raw files, and I still kept them for some stupid reason. So you know, it's kind of a spring cleaning kind of thing. So just go through every once in a while and take care of the ones that you don't have, and not put too many into one folder. All right, the next one is the auto level feature. I actually use this one a lot, and I've never had it once give me the wrong level. And so basically what it does is if you put in a photo, and let's say it's like a photo of a lake or something, and you know your horizon line is off, the auto level will automatically detect that horizon line and then straighten your photo up for you, kind of scale it in a little bit so you can, you know, you're not showing any useless information on the edges. So it kind of just auto corrects that for you, and I've had it work all the time. So usually that's one of my basic edits that I do when I get into Lightroom, is to you know, work my way down the develop module, but make sure I always click that on. And then that kind of rolls into my next topic thing, is to camera calibration. Do the camera calibration in Lightroom. It's really helpful to do that. Even if you can see that I'm basically talking about the not camera calibration. That's more of the colors part of it, but the lens correction part is actually what I'm talking about. The lens correction, that's the one where it detects the profile of your camera and your lens, that it can detect what you took it on. So, you know, when I pop mine in there, I enable the profile corrections, and it says you took this on your 24-70, you know, Canon 6D, and it changes your image to make sure that there's no there's, you know, less distortion. Maybe the colors are better, maybe it's exposed differently, because I've never noticed that when I enable my camera profile, it will go ahead and brighten the image up a lot. And, you know, that could be a combination of the camera and the lens doing something to the image. So I'll go ahead and do that first, because if I make my regular edits first, you know, I might change the exposure to brighten my image up a little bit, and then I'll go enable the profile, and it brightens it up even more. So I'll go ahead and do that first to see what it gives me, and then I'll go ahead and do my basic edits. But yeah, make sure you do the profile corrections, because it's really worked well with my my edits. All right, and the last one is basically saving the best for last, and there's a two-part thing to this. Use your presets. I'm a big fan of presets. I have a lot of them in my Lightroom catalog, and you know, if you're looking for photos to edit, and you find an edit that you really like, and I have a bunch of them that I really like, you find one that you really like, make a preset for it. Even if you know that it's probably not going to work for every photo, make a preset and just, you know, label it, you know, so-and-so's edit one, or give it a funky name or something. Presets are great. A lot of people I have heard do not like presets. You know, it's kind of like stealing somebody else's editing style. I don't feel like it's that way. I like it for me, because it makes my process faster and it gives me more ideas. But it was also helpful for me in the beginning when I was learning Lightroom, because I would download presets and see how they edited the photo, what they did to the photo to get it to look like that. So, you know, I would see how they use split toning to change all the highlights and the shadows and that sort of thing. How they would, you know, even put the vignetting on there, and maybe the brush adjustments, local adjustments. I would see all that stuff. So it's really helpful in those two ways, and that's why I actually developed what I'm calling the PictureMonk Presets, and that's basically, if you go to PictureMonk.com/shop, SHOP, I'm going to have presets for sale that are on there, and they come with, the first one is, you know, kind of a volume one, and it's just basically all of the ones that I've usually used, plus a couple other ones that I came up with that are really cool to use on your photos, and you can feel free to use them any which way you want to. They are it's basically, this volume 1 is like around 81 presets total, and it ranges from basic presets, film and lighting presets, landscape presets, modern presets, and wedding and portrait presets. And they're broken down into each individual folder, and the basic ones are basically, like simple one-click adjustments for white balance or clarity. There's center focus, tilt shift effect, that kind of thing. The lighting and film is kind of a cool little thing that I kind of been wanting to do for a while, and this kind of pushed me to do it. Is the lighting is making sunburst effects. If you want to have it look like you were shooting into the sun on a sunset day or sunset time, it'll kind of mimic that sun flare that you get behind your subject or stuff like that. So those are really cool. And then the film that goes along with that, I kind of made some presets that actually look like popular films out there. So, for example, there's a Star Trek one. I was actually, when I was making the preset, I was actually watching the last Star Trek movie, the Into Darkness movie on Netflix, and I was like, hey, that'd be kind of cool to make that. So I have that one in there. I have one for The Walking Dead because I'm a really big fan of that show. I have another one for like The Matrix. It's got that green dark feel to it. The landscape presets are basically meant for landscape photos. However, they obviously can be used any which way. They really concentrate on the blues and the greens and bringing out detail. Modern presets are really cool because they show different color grades that you can use. And the portrait and wedding presets are self-explanatory. They're mainly used for people. They kind of concentrate on smoothing some of the skin and keeping the contrast high, and kind of doing a little bit of fading, a little bit, that kind of thing. So you can actually check those out, like I said, at PictureMonk.com/shop. And when you go there, you'll see the Volume 1 section, and you just click on that, and you can read about what's in there, and you can actually see a couple sample photos that are at the bottom there, and you can check those out. And I wanted to announce this on the podcast so I can actually give you guys a deal if you wanted to for 1 week after this podcast. So from the 10th, when this podcast will be released, to the 17th of February 2015, just in case this is in the future, I'm actually giving 50% off of the whole preset pack. So if you go, if you want to check those out and want to order those, you do get an instant download. So when you pay for them, a link will be sent to your email, and you can download them directly from there. And they do also come with installation instructions. I also have a video that shows you how to install these. If you want to check those out, make sure you use the coupon code LRPreset50, and that'll give you 50% off of the preset pack. So check those out if you're interested in there. If you're not, no big deal. Just make sure you make your own presets if you're not going to do this. If you're any y'all involved in Lightroom, I really like presets, and that's why I kind of decided to make these and share them with everybody. So that's about it. I will make sure to put all of these little tidbits in the show notes. So PictureMonk.com/PMP013. You can check those out there. And again, thanks for joining me. I appreciate you guys downloading it, and I appreciate you guys listening. It's really fun to do this kind of thing and get to see different people come into the site and different people follow me on Twitter. There's a lot of people following me there, and you can check out there. I'm kind of more involved on Twitter than I am on Facebook. I'm starting to not like Facebook at all. So if you're gonna follow me anywhere, you can definitely follow me on Twitter. I'm also on Instagram. You can follow YouTube. You can get all the latest YouTube videos when they're released. So be sure to check all those links on PictureMonk.com. And that's about it, guys. I will see you in the next podcast, and talk to you guys later.